How's it going? So I was talking with one of my writers, and he was telling me about how when he was a kid, they made us use pencils in elementary school, and he had an aversion towards pencils. He never liked their sound on paper. Um, and then he was saying that as adults, or like for older kids, pens were the thing, and it was like a privilege. It was considered like a privilege when somebody would be able to use a pen instead of a pencil. And so he'd done some googling about it to see what that was all about. And said that there was a theory that said kids make a lot of mistakes with pencil, and so with pencil it's just easier to erase and restart. With a pen, you got to cross it off every time you make a mistake, so it doesn't look as tidy. One response said so they can correct their mistake and learn from them rather than say fuck it and move on like an adult. Interesting theories. I think that uh, I think that there's a lesson in this. Um, and there's actually I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story also about what I've been doing with my 6-year-old kid as well. It's also an interesting story. So basically, I think that there's no conspiracy around this. Children make a lot of mistakes. They're learning, and mistakes are part of that learning. And so every time they write something, they need to be able to erase it and try again. It's a need. They have to be able to do that, to restart, to essentially clear the canvas and write again what they wanted to do. What they wanted to write the correct way. And typically, it's not the kid himself who's going to go and erase it, but rather the adult is going to be, the teacher is going to be like, no, erase that and start again. Do it right, write it the correct way. Start from, follow the curve or whatever it is. So, so there's that. Whereas when you become older, especially with writing, you make fewer mistakes. Usually as an adult, you begin to course correct. So you might turn that A into an E. Write over it and sort of change its shape into an E. You might turn the F into an A or whatever. The capital F might become a capital A. You might, switch the period into a comma, or the comma into a period. You might, have forgotten an I, so you put a little caret and insert it in there or something. And for those times when you've made a more serious mistake, it's typically one or two words. It's a small area which you could use a little bit of whiteout to erase it and clean it up. To erase it and write it again, write something else in its place, right? So that's the difference that you have resetting the canvas, which is what children do, and there is course correcting, which is what adults do. Now, I think if you look at what real life looks like, in real life that tends to be how it works, more like what the adult version is, which is you typically cannot go back and rewrite history. You can't erase history. You look at the mistakes that you made, go back, erase those mistakes, start as if nothing had happened, and do it again. In real life, you've made some mistakes. I'm not talking about writing now. I'm talking about things that you've done, decisions that you've made. You've made some mistakes. You don't like the outcome. You adjust course and you keep going forward. That's kind of how it works. That's reality, right? You adjust course and keep going. And this is why in the super traffic machine, we actually built the training in that way, because I understand that people are learning. So most people in our industry, what they're going to do, especially when they are in their early days, they'll find an affiliate program they like. They'll get a domain name relevant to that particular product that they want to promote. Their entire identity becomes wrapped up in that particular product, and they go out and they try to promote it. And when it doesn't work, what they'll do is they'll try to do what the kid does: erase clean the canvas with an eraser and start over. They reset. The problem is that when they do this reset and they start with another product, number one, they've already invested a bunch of resources, time and money, typically, and they have also gained some experience, which they will typically some sorry reputation, some assets of placement, content, etc. That they will typically now just cross off, erase, and reset from. So they'll lose all of that progress that they made and start over. Now, sure, they may have gained some experience the first time around that they might apply the second time around, but pretty soon they find themselves running out of resources, getting impatient, and not having the sort of progress that would actually advance them. And the approach that we take is the iterative approach, in that we want I believe that the way that you should do it, so there is going to be a learning curve. That's not, you can't get out of that. You can't skip out of that. There's no way to not do that part, right? You have to learn. If so far you've been trying to make it in affiliate marketing and you haven't succeeded in affiliate marketing, there's some stuff that you haven't learned that you need to learn, right? So how do you get that learning and efficiently move forward? Well, you have to take an iterative approach to what you have learned, and that means that you build out small, basic building blocks and build on top of them. So I'm going to give you a little story, and then I'll come back and tell you a little bit more about how we are implementing this in the Super Traffic Machine. So recently, my kid, he's actually asked me about it quite for some time. He wants to, he wants to be, he claims he wants to be a games programmer, or a games artist, I should say. So he's actually quite artistic, and he's 6 years old, and his artwork is pretty nice. But like his cousins before him, he came to me asking, "Dad, how can I make a computer game?" Now, with him, I've always, whenever he's asked, I couldn't jump in and say, "Hell yeah, let's go," because that's my dream. My kid wants to learn to program. That's going to be like, obviously, I'm going to be super excited, because when I was 9, that is when I first took an interest in programming, and it was the most transformative thing that I could honestly. I really hope that my child could be as interested in that as I am now. When he asked me, I was like, I don't know, like when I was a child, I wanted to program a game. The problem is that most programming languages were text-based sort of things, and the minute that you want to go to user interface, graphical user interface stuff, that was a tall order. That was, some really tough stuff. It required you to do some crazy levels of programming. Luckily, when I was a child, there was something called HyperCard, which was pretty popular. Well, it was actually quite revolutionary. Even now, people still reminisce about it. HyperCard was a Mac language that is kind of multimedia language. Anyway, so I found something similar for my kid called Unity, and Unity is it's a games programming language, and it's actually used to build some of the popular games that are out there already. So Hello Neighbor, for instance, is built with Unity, and it's cool because it can actually, you build it in the same interface, and then you can output it as a game for Android, for iOS, for Xbox. You can send it out for multiple platforms, and it's all from you only create the program once. And it's pretty cool because it's all graphical. There's a little bit of, obviously, there's some coding, but there's a lot of graphical elements to it. You drag on the sprites and you make the movements on. So anyway, we installed it, and he's actually been programming with it. But what I wanted to talk about was the intro video, which was really cool. So they had this intro video when you first install it, where they had these people, famous games programmers, talking at the beginning of it, giving advice to the budding programmer who's trying to, learn to create their first game. And so one of the guys says, I learned that you don't want to get distracted. You want to go in. The first thing you want to do is just get your guy to move around, move around the screen. Don't worry about like adding lighting. Don't worry about, figuring out the map, whatever. Just have your guy move around the screen. And that was really good advice, because basically what that is just start with something basic and simple that's working, and then build up on it. And that is what we did with the super traffic machine, the approach that we took. So the way that we did it is that you would go and you would build out the core manual. So if you haven't taken the super traffic machine, what you might not know about it is that it has a core manual where there are the main instructions, right? The step by step that you would have to do, and then and those are like written in such a way that we understand that you're ultimately going to come back and revise, right? But let's just move on from this. So the second part, this is the basics, right? The core, and the core, as you finish these steps, you check them off and you finish those things, and you have something that is functional, that's working, but it's basic, right? And then there's a second part to it, which is like either put in the appendix, or because sometimes these appendices become really, quite thick, they become as big as a manual themselves. So we would separate them out into another manual, which we call the resource manual for that particular module. And what that second manual represents is it's not meant for you to deal with it right now. Typically, it's for when you come back. We know that you're going to ultimately finish building out your machine, your super traffic machine, and then you're going to come back and you want to review things. You want to make it better, create enhancements. That's the second iteration. So when you come back, you would find that there's some advanced information in that appendix or in the resource manual, which you would then be able to implement pieces from that. So in this way, rather than resetting, starting from scratch, the way that a child might, by erasing or getting a blank canvas and beginning again all their effort, you've got a building block that's working. You've got your little guy walking around the screen. Now you go in there and you add the texture. Oh, let's add a little bit of, enhancement here. Let's put on this. This would be nice to have. This would be a nice little extra to add on. Let me give you an example of how that worked out with one of my students. So this guy came to me. He'd built out everything. He'd finished out his super traffic machine. He had everything in place. And he said to me, look, I'm running my campaign at, I don't know, $5 a day or something like that. I know it's not a lot, but can you have a look at it and tell me what I could do to maybe improve it and make it better? So I checked it out and I said, well, the campaign's actually looking pretty decent. I don't think that I would change much in this. This is decent. This is okay. But what I might suggest that you do is the landing page that you've got, it's the splash page. How about you switch to the hybrid page? Now, just to give you some background on what that is. So when the basic page that we teach people to build in the Module 5 manual is basically, it's a really, really simple lead capture page that's known as a splash page. It's like got the basics. It's the building blocks, the basics of a page that would capture, turn visitors into leads and put them onto your mailing list. Okay, so this is the splash page. And the hybrid page is actually a more complex, it's an advanced page. It's described in the resources manual, so it's not in the core training material, but in the resources manual, and it's made up of multiple blocks. The first block of which is essentially a splash page, okay? And it's got also, it tends to have a primary and a secondary call to action. And so the primary call to action would typically pop up a pop-up box, and that pop-up box would basically be your splash page. So if you built a splash page, that is going to be used in the header, top block, and it will be used in the pop-up. It's not wasted. You're not throwing it away. It's just that you're enhancing it with a sort of a sales page, some sales material to go along with it. So when I told him to do this, he said to me, well, I thought that was an advanced technique and I wanted to get things right. And I said to him, no, this is the right time to do it, because it was never meant to be the final page that you would send traffic to. It just was supposed to be almost a placeholder that will work. But I always knew it wasn't going to be a very, very fine, a very well finely oiled machine type of a thing. It's not going to bring in a lot of your leads. It's not going to come in without any friction whatsoever. There will be, you'll need to, it's going to be hard. So definitely build that. So he went off and he built it, and he came back and he showed it to me. And by this point, he's increased his his traffic flow. Sorry, his lead flow is higher. He's converting more of the clicks that he's spending on. The cost per lead has gone down. The quality of the leads that he's getting is much higher now, and what he's getting is a lot of people. There's much more people who are now purchasing the product than there were before. And so just like that, he didn't reset like most people would have done in our industry. When things don't work, you don't know what to fix anyway, and you go and you reset. You just, okay, let's just change the offer, let's change the product. Typically that's the only thing you can really do. With our approach, you go back and you add an enhancement. So maybe you're like, okay, you know what? Let's try a different approach to the email, the follow-up emails. So I give you five templates for follow-up emails, five templates for emails, three of which are good follow-up emails that I typically use nothing but these. Okay. Let's say I also have a freestyle one that I occasionally use, but for the most part, I'm following one of these patterns. One of these patterns is what I do personally. And so there's nothing wrong with, once you put those things in place, to say, hey, you know what, maybe I could get better results from my email marketing if I tried out this other approach. Maybe I'm going to use this subject line technique or whatever it is. And so in that way, you would just be doing a reiteration, a fix on, a kind of repair, but it's working from a baseline where you're improving upon it rather than from nothing. So for instance, with the tutorials, with my son, we were following some tutorials to build out this game for him. So in the game, we build out a little space character who's moving around the screen, and we've been working as like a multi-part tutorial. And the guy is white when you create him. Initially, he's just white color, and so my kid has been having a blast changing the color of the guy, because it's like that's the one thing where he's actually doing something himself with it, and it's like a really great thing. It also reminds me of when I was a child, and I was learning to program. One of the things that I remember doing a lot of was I used to get out these books from the library with these wonderful seeming games, and I'd just sit and I'd copy them, and there'd be maybe hundreds of lines of code, and I'm copying and copying and copying for days. And with code, you can't make a mistake. And it wasn't even like code that was written for my version, my computer even. So I'd copy it out and then I'd run it and it wouldn't work. And I'd try again, another code, and I'd try again. And every time I'd build a piece of code, it wouldn't work. But then one day I wrote this silly little application when I was 9 or 10 years old. I wrote this little stupid application. What it did was it simply asked, I think an addition or subtraction or a multiplication problem, something like that. It would ask one of these, and then you would type the answer, and if it was right, it will say correct. If it was incorrect, it will tell you incorrect, and then at the end, it'll give you a score. It gives you 10 questions. I showed it to my dad, so proud. Look at this, Dad. This is the first one I wrote for myself. He looked at it, it was like, beautiful, amazing, really great. And then he said to me, so do you think you can make it ask 20 questions, for instance? Oh, that's easy. Select all, copy, paste. I just copied the code for the second time. And I was like, there we go. And he said, how about 100 times? I'm like, easy. Select all, copy, paste, paste, paste. And I was like, yeah, And he was like, surely there's a better way than this. I'm like, you know what? I remember reading in one of the books about something called a loop. Let me have a look at that. And I went back and looked through the book and I found it. And he's off, doing his work on his computer. We were sitting in the university computer lab, and he was doing his PhD thesis at the time. And I went and I deleted all that extra copy paste that I'd done, and I shortened my code to this tiny little thing that just basically goes loop, and said to him, all right, Dad, check it out. I showed him. He said, can you make it do it 100 times? I'm like, yep. I equals whatever 100. So it was like just a simple change of variable, and it was like, oh wow. And my dad could not have been prouder. But that was my first. That was basically where I finally learned how to go from um, following a tutorial where I just copied the instructions to creating something of my own. And that is a process that everybody who's going to learn how to do affiliate marketing, who's going to do marketing, who's never had success with it, is going to have to follow. You're going to have to follow a tutorial that gets you to a basic result, okay? Something that works, functional. It's got to be just, if you can get it to make your first sale, and that's my objective. I want to get you to making your first sale. If I can get you to make that first sale, and I know that it can repeat, that sale can repeat, maybe once every month, maybe once every couple of months, or something like that, maybe. It might take some time. But if I can get that, if I can get you to that result, then enhancing becomes a matter of making a few tweaks here and there. So I don't try to complicate things for my students by introducing a lot of extra things that you've got to do, a lot of tricks and secrets and strategies and tactics and all that nonsense. I just want to give you the basics that would get you to the point where you've got something that works, and we know that it should work in theory. It might not be, it might take a lot of more time to get it to the point that is actually produced a sale. But we know that if you put enough, you repeat the activities that you're supposed to do, which is you run an ad budget against it, whatever size that might be. As I told you, the guy was doing $5 a day. And you're sending out your emails on a frequent basis, whatever that comfortable level is for you, but you are frequent enough about it, you're consistent in sending out your emails. Ultimately, your thing should sell at least once. And when it does that, then it is time to start playing in with the refinements. And you have those refinements in the super traffic machine manuals supplied to you, so you're able to now go in and do that. It's also, we've designed the manuals. I should show them to you sometime as well, in case you haven't seen them. But we designed them so that it's really simple to just, look up anything that you want to know how to do, so you can come back and easily review the instructions. Because what we've done is this, on the left column, there's like a summary of the steps that you need to do. So it's you got the major step as a section, and then you got the sub steps in the left column, and then you've got the sub steps, so the specific instructions are inside. So you can easily find exactly the thing that you're looking for, so you can implement that, or refine or correct that part. If there was an issue with how you applied it, you think that, oh, I could have done this part better, you can go and just reiterate it, and it will be a lot better the second time around, especially when you have actually, you know what you're going in and trying to repair at this point, rather than, I don't know what the hell's going wrong here, what's not working. So when you've got your sale, you're like, okay, so it looks like, the sale costs too much. For instance, it takes too much money to convert a person to a customer. Okay, well, the first thing that you could do there is probably try to prime the traffic better. So a hybrid landing page would be probably the solution to that. And there's a tutorial for how to do that. So yeah, that's kind of that's my thinking there. I think this is a great way to approach learning anything, honestly. To do it in an iterative way, where you start out with the very, 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 very basics, with the building blocks, and then you take those and you add texture to them, you add refinement, you add the extra stuff. Don't try to start right from the get-go with the secret tactics and the strategies and the advanced stuff. That stuff is, honestly, even people who've been doing it for a long time, they don't even, I don't go and use anybody else's advanced tactics. The advanced tactics are things that I'm creating for myself. They're really specific to me. They work because I'm trying to solve specific problems of my own, and so I innovate those ideas for myself. And you will too. You'll find ways to innovate solutions for yourself. I know one of our students, for instance, was telling me that he's started to use a quiz landing page instead of the splash page. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's, once you've built it the first time around and you decide, okay, you know what, I'm going to test out a quiz landing page, dude, test it out. That's not something I teach in the super traffic machine. But nothing wrong with testing it out. If it gives you better results, then awesome. That's how it's supposed to be. That's how it should be. You should be able to go back and make those refinements as you need them, as you see that you need them. So yeah, let me know what you think, and if you want to hear more, let me know.